They tried to trade the alien princess, but a human battleship declared her priceless. That is how the story began, and it spread across the galaxy like fire. For many years, the galaxy had treated her as nothing more than a rare jewel, a prize, a bargaining piece to be moved across tables heavy with politics and greed. She was young, but her name carried the weight of empires. She was the last heir of a fallen throne, and her very existence had become dangerous. Her capture became a signal, like blood in the water, and it brought out every predator. Warlords, merchants, slave lords, and syndicate rulers all came to the station orbiting a nameless moon. They came to decide how much her life was worth, as if life could ever be measured in credits or fleets. Outside, warships floated like vultures waiting for meat. Inside the chamber, the voices of a dozen rulers echoed, each offering to buy her, each trying to outbid the other. The chamber was dark and cold, its walls made of black alloy. Flags of the warlords hung around, each one a sign of power. The alien princess stood on a raised platform, locked in glowing chains that burned at her wrists. The chains were meant to break her spirit, but they did not. She kept her head high, her silver-blue skin shining like starlight under the torches. Her dark eyes showed anger and sadness, but no fear. She remembered the stories of her ancestors, rulers who once guided thousands of worlds with peace, not cruelty. Those stories were the only crown left to her, and she wore them in her heart even now. The rulers shouted about her like she was nothing but an object. Some wanted to sell her to the scientists of the ZTH Consortium, who would use her DNA for experiments. Others wanted her bloodline to claim lost planets. Some wanted her beauty for display in cages of gold. The numbers rose higher and higher. Fleets, weapons, mountains of wealth, each one shouted with pride, as if buying her would make them gods. She said nothing. She only raised her chin and looked them in the eye. Her silence made them uneasy, though they laughed to cover it. They wanted her to beg, to break, but she would not give them that victory. In the corner of the chamber stood a man many of them ignored. He was a human envoy, dressed in a plain gray uniform with a small crest of Earth's Navy on his chest. No jewelry, no luxury, no power to his name, at least not in their eyes. To them, he was a joke. Humanity had only one great ship. One ship against the galaxy. What threat could that be? They mocked him openly, calling humans children who had wandered into a game too big for them. But the envoy did not answer their jokes. He only stood still, listening, his eyes fixed on the princess. Hidden in his sleeve was a beacon, small and silent. And when the moment came, when her voice cut through the chamber and said, strong and clear, "I am not a possession. I will not be sold," he pressed it. The pulse raced out into the void, faster than thought, carrying one message to one ship. Fire away. In the darkness between stars, the battleship Resolute woke. It had been waiting. Its engines roared to life like thunder. On its bridge stood Captain Elias Ward, his scarred face set like stone. Around him, the crew stared at the hologram of the warlord fleets, countless ships surrounding the station. Fear touched their hearts. One ship against so many. It looked like madness. But Elias Ward spoke only one line. "Prepare for engagement. She will not be traded. Not while we live." The Resolute was a mystery to the galaxy. Many laughed at it. They called it Earth's foolish attempt to prove itself. They said one ship could never change anything. But they had never seen its heart. Humans had built it not to conquer but to survive. It carried weapons no one else understood. Shields crafted from ruins others ignored. Engines that burned like suns. It was a creation born from human stubbornness, the refusal to bow. The alarms in the station began to ring. The warlords paused in their arguments, their screens showing a black shadow approaching. At first they laughed, thinking it a scavenger. Then the silhouette filled their senses, massive and sharp, carrying the emblem of Earth. The name appeared. Resolute. For a moment, silence spread through the chamber. The alien princess lifted her eyes to the projection, and something new sparked inside her chest. Hope. Not because she believed the humans could win. They were still only one ship, but because they dared to arrive at all. The envoy stepped forward. His voice cut through the hole, louder than the laughter. "On behalf of Earth, he said. "The princess is not for sale. She is not your property. If you trade her, you will answer to us." The warlords howled with laughter again. "You dare," they shouted. "You with your single ship." But outside, the Resolute's weapons came alive. Their hum spread across the void like a god's heartbeat. And for the first time, the predators of the galaxy began to wonder if humanity had come not to trade, not to bow, but to remind them what priceless truly meant. The chamber was heavy with silence after the envoy's words. Every alien leader stared, waiting for him to shrink back, waiting for fear to break his voice. But he stood calm, his gray uniform plain, his eyes steady. Outside, the shadow of the Resolute grew larger, and the light of the local star dimmed under its mass. The humans had come, and they had not come to trade. The warlords laughed louder to hide their unease. Their voices shook the chamber as they shouted insults at humanity. "You are nothing," cried one with red armor shining. "A single ship against the fleets of empires. You will be crushed." Another slammed his clawed hand on the table. "Earth is weak. Do not pretend you have power here." Yet the princess, still bound in glowing chains, felt her heart rise for the first time since her capture. She turned her head toward the great window of the dome, where the shadow of the Resolute hung like a blade drawn in defiance. Her dark eyes softened, not with tears, but with something far stronger, hope. Then it happened. A sound filled the chamber, low and deep, carried through every wall and every air. It was not a weapon yet, but a warning. The humans had opened their comms. The voice of Captain Elias Ward cut through the silence, hard as iron. "She is not for sale. She is not for barter. She is under the protection of Earth. If you attempt to trade her, you will answer to us." The words echoed across the hall. For a moment no one spoke. The rulers stared at each other, their confidence shaken. Some muttered that the humans were bluffing. Others argued that no captain would risk war for one life. Yet outside, the ship moved closer, its hull blotting out the sky, its weapons glowing brighter with power. The princess closed her eyes for a moment. She had been raised on stories of courage, but she had never believed she would see it again. Yet here it was, a species with one ship, willing to bend for her dignity. The warlords shouted again, trying to reclaim their strength. "Fire upon them. Show these humans they cannot dictate terms to us," roared the one in red armor. His words stirred the others. Some nodded. Some raised their weapons in the air as a show of dominance. But then the chamber shook. The dome above trembled as the Resolute lowered in orbit, until every eye could see its black steel hull, its engines burning like suns. It was no bluff. It was a promise. And then the fear came. Quiet at first, like a shadow, then spreading through the crowd like a storm. Because the humans did not posture with empty words. Their ship was not for display. It was built for war. And the galaxy, for the first time, saw it ready to strike. The princess lifted her head higher, her voice ringing across the chamber. "You cannot buy me. You cannot own me. I am not a thing. And they," she turned her gaze toward the shadow of the Resolute, "they have reminded you of that truth." Her words were strong, and they cut through the laughter like a blade. The rulers fell silent, their greed trembling under the weight of defiance. On the bridge of the Resolute, Captain Ward gave a single order. "Weapons, full charge." Lights flared across the hull, cannons glowing with energy. Every ship around the station received the lock of targeting systems. Hundreds of blinking red dots appeared on screens, each one a reminder that humanity was not bluffing. The warlords panicked. Some shouted to hold fire. Others barked at their fleets to prepare for battle. But no one moved first. No one wanted to test what the humans would do. Because in the silence of that moment, they understood. Earth would rather burn than bow. Fear turned into retreat. One by one, the rulers withdrew their bids. Their voices cracked as they tried to save face, pretending they never wanted her. The warlord in red armor spat curses, but even he stepped back, unwilling to be the first to fall. The envoy walked to the dais. He pressed a device against the glowing chains, and they fell apart in sparks. The alien princess was free. For the first time, she stumbled, not from weakness, but from the shock of standing without chains. The envoy bowed slightly. "Princess, if you wish, the Resolute is waiting." She looked at him, her eyes wet now, not with sorrow but with something far greater, gratitude. With her head high, she walked forward, each step echoing through the chamber like a declaration. As she left the hall with the human envoy, no one dared stop her. Behind them, the Resolute hung above, weapons charged, shields glowing, engines roaring. It was the shadow of defiance, the blade of humanity, daring the galaxy to test its will. When the princess stepped onto its deck, Captain Elias Ward greeted her with a nod. No crown, no ceremony, no demands, only respect. "You are safe now," he said simply. And for the first time, she believed it. She was not a prize, not a tool, not a possession. She was priceless, and the humans had proved it to the entire galaxy. The Resolute turned its bow from the station, engines blazing as it carried her into the stars. And though they had only one ship, that day humanity taught the galaxy a truth that could never again be forgotten. There are some lives that cannot be measured, some beings that cannot be sold. And one species, stubborn and defiant, had stood to prove it.